up and music going down, and we welcome you all to a Sunday night edition of Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Hope everyone's had a wonderful week this week. We have got something new tonight. We wanted to do something we haven't done before. I haven't done actually since we started doing this show almost 2 years ago. I am going to do some Mark Twain. And this one, particularly this Mark Twain, is unique for all the stories and plays and novels he's done. Twain was born Samuel Langhorne Clemens, November 30th, 1835, and died April 21st, 1910. He lived a very long life. His history is surrounded by great writers who he looked to for inspiration. He was one of the most prolific authors in U.S. history. His works under both his real name and his pen name, Mark Twain, spanned 15 novels, 32 short stories, 19 collections, 17 essays, and 11 nonfiction works. He was truly prolific on what he created for the world. And this book is unique for the fact that it was written in 1898, Mysterious Stranger, based, he wrote it not here for a story based in the United States, but in Austria. The problem was this story was never finished. That's the unique thing. There's only 11 chapters, long chapters, but this book was never finished by Twain. There has been searches throughout his life for what could be the final chapters, but it seems, mysterious, as it were. So maybe he purposely didn't write it to be completed. Maybe there was a reason for it not to be finished. But we'll be doing that. But if you get a chance, don't forget today, as always, if you can like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps the algorithm out a little bit. And it allows me to say, hey, somebody's watching, which is a nice thing. But we will try to be doing, like I said, like and subscribe. We will try to do hopefully 3 chapters. Like I said, this is a long frickin' book, guys. The chapters are long. It's only 11 chapters, but they are long. So we'll see how things pan out. Well, let's get started right away with the story. As I said, written in 1898. This is The Mysterious Stranger, based in the year 1590. Chapter 1, The Mysterious Stranger. It was in 1590, winter. Austria was far away from the world and asleep. It was still the Middle Ages in Austria and promised to remain so forever. Some even said it way back centuries upon centuries, and said that by the mental and spiritual clock, it was still the age of belief in Austria. But they meant it as a compliment, not a slur, not to be taken so, and we were all proud of it. I remember it well, although I was only a boy, and I remember, too, the pleasure it gave me. Yes, Austria was far from the world and asleep, and our village was in the middle of that sleep, being in the middle of Austria. It drowsed in peace and in the depth privacy of hilly and woodsy solitude, where news came from the world hardly ever came to disturb its dreams. And was definitely content. Hang on a second, guys. I want to get a little bit organized here. At its front flowed the tranquil river, its surface painted with the cloud forms and the reflections of drifting arcs and stone boats. Behind it rose the woody steps to the base of the lofty precipice. From the top of the precipice frowned a vast castle, it long stretched of towers and bastions mailed in vines beyond the river. A league to the left was a tumbled expanse of forest-clothed hills, cloven by wooden gorges where the sun never penetrated, and to the right, a precipice overlooked the river, and between it and the hills just spoken of a layer of far-away reaching plain dotted with the little homesteads nested among orchards and shaded trees. The whole region for leagues around was the hereditary property of a prince whose servants kept the castle always in perfect condition for occupancy. But neither he nor his family came there oftener than once in 5 years. When they came, it was as if the Lord of the world had arrived and had brought all the glories of its kingdoms along. And when they left a calm behind, which was like a deep sleep which follows an orgy. Esseldorf was a paradise for us boys. We were not overmuch pestered with schooling. Mainly, we were trained to be good Christians, to revere the Virgin and the Church and the saints above everything. Beyond these matters, we were not required to know much. In fact, not allowed to. Knowledge was not good for the common people and could not make them discontented with the lot which God had appointed for them, and God would not endure discontentment with his plans. We had 2 priests. One of them, Father Adolf, a very zealous and strenuous priest, much considered. There may have been better priests, but in some ways, than Father Adolf. But there was never one in our commune who was held in more solemn and awful respect. This was because he had absolutely no fear of the devil. He was the only Christian I ever knew known of whom that could be truly said. People stood in deep dread of him on that account, for they thought that there must be something supernatural about him, else he could not be so bold and so confident. All men speak in bitter disapproval of the devil, but they do so reverently, not flippantly. But Father Adolf's way was very different. He called him by every name he could lay his tongue to, and it made everyone shudder to he heard him, and often he could even speak of him scornfully and scoffingly. Then the people crossed themselves and went quickly out of his presence, fearing that something fearful might happen. Father Adolf had actually met Satan face to face more than once and defied him. This was known to be so. Father Adolf had himself. He never made any secret of it, but spoke of it outright. And that he was speaking true, there was proof in at least one instance, for on that occasion he quarreled with the enemy and intrepidly threw his bottle at him, and there upon the wall of his study was the ruddy splotch where it struck and broke. But it was Father Pete, the other priest that we all loved best and were sorriest for. Some people charged him with talking around in conversation that God was all goodness and would find a way to save all his poor human children. It was a horrible thing to say, but there was never anything absolute proof that Father Pete said it. And it was out of character for him to say it too, for he was always good and gentle and truthful. He wasn't charged with anything in it, saying it on the pulpit, where all the congregation could hear and testify, but only outside in talk, and it was easy for enemies to manufacture it. Father Peter had an enemy, and a very powerful one. The astrologer who lived in a tumbled old tower up on the valley and put in his nights studying the stars. Everyone knew he could foretell wars and famines, though that was not so hard, for there was always a war and generally a famine somewhere. But he could also read any man's life through the stars in a big book he had and find lost prosperity, and everyone in the village except Father Peter stood in awe of him. Even Father Adolf, who defied the devil, had a wholesome respect for the astrologer when he came through our village wearing his tall, pointed hat, long, flowing robes with stars on it, carrying his big book and staff, which was known to have magic power. The bishop himself sometimes listened to the astrologer, it was said, for besides studying the stars and prophesying, the astrologer made a great show of piety, which would impress the bishop, of course. But Father Peter took no stock in the astrologer. He denounced him openly as a charlatan, a fraud with no valuable knowledge of any kind or powers beyond those of ordinary and rather inferior human being, which naturally made the astrologer hate Father Peter and wish to ruin him. It was the astrologer, as we all believed, who originated the story about Father Peter's shocking remark and carried it to the bishop. It was said that Father Peter had made the remark to his niece, Margaret, though Margaret denied it, and implored the bishop to believe her and spare her old uncle from poverty and disgrace. But the bishop wouldn't listen. He suspended Father Peter indefinitely, though he wouldn't go so far as to excommunicate him on the evidence of only one witness. And now Father Peter had been out of a couple of years, and our only priest, Father Adolf, had his flock. Those had been hard years for the old priest and Margaret. They had been favorites, but of course that changed when they came under the shadow of the bishop's frown. Many of their friends fell away entirely, and the rest became cool and distant. Margaret was a lovely girl of 18 when the trouble came, and she had the best head in the village and the most of it. She taught the harp and earned all her clothes and pocket money by her own industry. But her scholars fell away one by one now. She was forgotten when there were dances and parties among the youth of the village. The young fellows stopped coming to the house, all except Wilhelm Bedling, and he could have been spared. She and her uncle were sad and forlorn in their neglect and disgrace, and their sunshine was gone out of their lives. Matters went worse and worse all through the 2 years. Clothes were wearing out, bread was harder and harder to get, and now at last the very end was come. Solomon Isaacs had lent all the money he was willing to put on the house and gave notice that tomorrow he would foreclose. Chapter 2. 3 of us boys were always together, and we had been so from the cradle, being fond of one another from the beginning, and this affection deepened as the years went on. Nicholas Baumann, son of the principal judge of the local court, Seppi Volharmeyer, son of the keeper of the principal inn, the Golden Stag, which had nice garden with shade trees reaching down to the riverside and pleasure boats for hire. And I was the third, Theodore Fisher, son of the church organist, who was also leader of the village musicians, teacher of the violin, composer, tax collector of the commune, sexton, and in other ways a useful citizen, and respected by all. We knew the hills and the woods as well as the birds knew them, for we were always roaming them when we had leisure, at least, when we were not swimming or boating or fishing or playing on the ice and sliding downhill. We had the run of the castle park. We had the run of the castle park, and very few had that. It was because we were pets of the oldest serving men of the castle, Felix Brandt. And often we went there nights to hear him talk about old times and strange things and to smoke with him. He taught us that. To drink coffee, for he had served in the wars and was there at the siege of Vienna and there when the Turks were defeated and driven away. Among the captured things were bags of coffee, and Turkish prisoners explained the character of it and how to make a pleasant drink out of it. And now he was always kept coffee by him to drink himself and to also to astonish the ignorant with. When it stormed, he kept us all night, and while it thundered and lightning outside, he told us about ghosts and horrors of every kind, and of battles and murders and mutilations and such things, and made it pleasant and cozy inside. And he told us these things from his own experiences largely. He had seen many ghosts in his time, and witches and enchanters, and once he was lost in a fierce storm at midnight in the mountains, and by the glare of the lightning he had seen the wild huntsman rage on the blast, with his specter dogs chasing after him through the driving cloud rack. Also, he had seen an incubus once, and several times he had seen the great bat that sucks the blood from the necks of people while they are sleeping, fanning them softly with his wings, and so keeping them drowsy until they die. He encouraged us not to fear supernatural things, such as ghosts, and said that they did not harm, but only wandered about because they were lonely and distressed and wanted kindly notice and compassion. And in time we learned not to be afraid, and even went down with him in the night to the haunted chamber in the dungeons of the castle. The ghost appeared only once, and it went by very dim to the very sight and floated noisily through the air and then disappeared. And we were scarcely trembled, he had taught us so well. He said it came up sometimes in the night, it spoke and woke him by passing its clammy hands over his face, but it did him no hurt. It only wanted sympathy and notice. But the strangest thing was that he had seen angels, actual angels out of heaven, and he had talked with them. They had no wings and wore clothes and talked and looked and acted just like a natural person. And would never know them for angels except for the wonderful things that they did a mortal could not do. And the way they suddenly disappeared while you were talking with them, while also a thing which no mortal could do. He said they were pleasant and cheerful, not gloomy and melancholy like ghosts. It was after that kind of talk one May night that we got up next morning, had a good breakfast with him, and then went down and crossed the bridge and went away up into the hills on the left to the woody hilltop, which was a favorite place of ours, and there we stretched out on the grass in the shade to rest and smoke and talk over these things, for they were things in our minds yet, and impressing us. But we couldn't smoke because we hadn't been heedless, and left our flint and steel behind. Soon there came a youth strolling towards us through the trees, and he sat down and began to talk in a friendly way, just as if he knew us. But we did not answer him, for he was a stranger, and we were not used to strangers, and were shy to them. He had new and good clothes on, and was handsome and had a winning face and a pleasant voice, and was easy and graceful and unembarrassed, not slouchy and awkward and different like other boys. We wanted to be friendly with him, but didn't know how to begin. Then I thought of the pipe, and I wondered if it would be taken as a kindly meant if I offered it to him. But I remembered that we had no fire, so I was sorry and disappointed. But he looked up bright and pleased and said, "Fire? Oh, that's easy. I will furnish it." I was so astonished I couldn't speak, for I had not said anything. He took the pipe, blew his breath on it, and the tobacco glowed red, and spirals of blue smoke rose up. We jumped up and were going to run, for that was natural, and we had run a few steps, although he was yearningly pleading with us to stay, and gave us his word that he would not do us any harm, but only wanted to be friends with us and have company. So we stopped and stood and wanted to go back, being full of curiosity and wonder, but afraid to venture. He went on coaxing in his soft, pervasive voice, and when we saw that the pipe did not blow up and nothing happened, our confidence returned little by little, and presently our curiosity got to be strong enough that our fear and our ventured back, but slowly and ready to fly at any alarm. He was bent on putting us at ease, and he had the right art. One could not remain doubtful and timorous where a person was so earnest and simple and gentle, and talked so luring as he did. No, he won us over, and it was not long before we were content and comfortable in chatting and glad we had found a new friend. When the feeling of constraint was all gone, we asked him how he had learned how to do that strange thing, and he said he couldn't, that he hadn't learned it at all. It came natural to him, like other things, other curious things. What ones? Oh, a number. I don't know how many. Will you let us see you do these? Do, please, the others said. You won't run away again. No, indeed we won't. Please do, won't you? Yes, with pleasure. But you mustn't forget your promise, you know. We said we wouldn't, and we went to a puddle and came back with a cup of water which we made out of a leaf, and blew upon it and threw it out, and it was a lump of ice in the shape of a cup. We were astonished and charmed, but not afraid anymore. We were glad to be there and asked him to go on and do more things. And he did. He said he would give us any kind of fruit we liked, whether it was in season or not. We all spoke at once. Orange, apple, grapes. They are in your pockets, he said. And it was true. And they were of the best too, and we ate them and wished we had more, though none of us said so. You will find them where those came from, he said, and everything else your appetite calls for. And you need not name the things you wish. And as long as I am with you, you have only to wish and find. And he said true. There were never anything so wonderful and interesting. Bread, cakes, sweets, nuts, whatever one wanted, it was there. He ate nothing himself, but sat and chatted and did one curious thing after another to amuse us. He made a tiny toy squirrel out of clay, and it ran up a tree and sat on a limb overhead and barked down at us. Then he made a dog that was not much larger than a mouse, and it treed the squirrel and danced about the tree, excited and barking, and it was alive as any dog could be. It frightened the squirrel from tree to tree and followed it up until both were out of sight in the forest. He made birds out of clay and set them free, and they flew away singing. At last I made a bold to ask him to tell us who he was. An angel, he said, quite simply, and set another bird free and clapped his hands and made it fly away. A kind of awe fell upon us when we heard him say that, and we were not afraid again. But he said we need not be troubled. There was no occasion for us to be afraid of an angel, and he liked us anyway. He went on chatting as simply and as unaffectedly as ever, and while he talked, he made a crowd of little men and women, the size of your finger, and they were diligently to work and cleared and leveled off a space a couple square yards square in the grass, and began to build a cunning little castle in it. The women mixing the mortar and carrying it up the scaffolding in pails on their heads, just as our workwomen have always done, and the men laying the courses of masonry, 500 of these toy people swarming briskly about the working diligently and wiping the sweat off their faces as naturally as life. In the absorbing interest of watching those 500 little people make the castle grow step by step and course by course and take shape in symmetry, the feeling of awe soon passed away, and we were quite comfortable and at home again. We asked if we might make some people, and he said yes, and told Seppi to make some cannon for the walls, and told Nicholas to make some halberders with breastplates and greavers and helmets, and I was to make some cavalry with horses, and in allotting these tasks, he called us by our names, but did not say how he knew them. Then Seppi asked him what his own name was, and said tranquilly, Satan, and held out a chip and caught a little woman on it who was falling from the scaffolding, and put her back where he belonged, and said, she is an idiot to step backward like that and not notice where she was about. It caught us suddenly, that name did, and our work dropped out of our hands and broke to pieces. A cannon, an halberdier, and a horse. Satan laughed and asked what was the matter. I said, nothing, only it seems strange name for an angel, he asked why. Because well, it's a name, you know. Yes, he is my uncle. He said it placidly, but it took our breath for a moment and made our hearts beat. He did not seem to notice that, but mended our halberds and things with a touch, and handing them back to us to finish, and said, don't you remember? He was an angel himself, once. Yes, it's true, said Seppi. I didn't think of that. Before the fall, he was blameless. Yes, said Nicholas, he was without sin. It was a good family, ours, said Satan. There it was not better. He is the only member of it that has ever sinned. I should not be able to make anyone understand how exciting it all was. You know, that kind of quiver that trembles around through you when you are seeing something so strange and enchanting and wonderful that is just fearful joy to be alive and look at it, and you know, that gaze, and your lips turn dry and your breath comes short, but you wouldn't be anywhere but there. Not for the world. I was bursting to ask one question, but had it on my tongue's end, but couldn't hardly hold it back. But I was ashamed to ask it, and I might be a rudeness. Satan had set an ox down that he had been making, and smiled up at me and said, it wouldn't be rudeness, and I should forgive if it was. Have I seen him? Millions of times. From the time I was a little child, 1,000 years ago, I was his second favorite among the nursery angels of our blood and lineage. To use the human phrase, yes, from that time until the fall, 8,000 years measured as you count. 15,000. Yes, he turned to Seppi and went on as if answering something that was in Seppi's mind. Why, naturally, I look like a boy, for that I am. With us, what you call time is spacious thing. It takes a long stretch of it to grow an angel's full age. There was a question in my mind, and he turned to me and answered it. I am 16,000 years old, counting as you count. Then he turned to Nicholas and said, no, the fall did not affect me nor the rest of the relationship. It was only he that was named for who ate the fruit of the tree and then beguiled the man and the woman with it. We thought we others are still ignorant of sin. We are not able to commit it. We are without blemish. We shall abide in the estate always. We, two of the little workmen, were quarreling in a buzzing little bumblebee voice. They were cursing and swearing at each other. Now came blows and blood. Then they locked themselves together in a life and death struggle. Satan reached out with his hand, crushed the life out of them with his fingers, threw them away, wiped the red from his fingers and his handkerchief, and went on talking where he had left off. We cannot do wrong, neither have we any disposition to do it, for we do not know what it is. It seemed a strange speech, in circumstance, but we barely noticed that we were so shocked and grievanced at the wanton murder he had committed, for murder it was, that it was its truest name, and it was without palliation or excuse. For the men had not wronged him in any way. It made us miserable, for we loved him, and thought him so noble and so beautiful and gracious, and had honestly believed he was an angel, and to have him do this cruel thing, it lowered him so, and we had had such pride in him. It went right on talk. He went right on talking, just as if nothing had happened, telling about his travels and his interesting things that he had seen in the big worlds of our solar system, and of the other solar systems far away in the remoteness of space, and about the customs of immortals that inhabit them, somehow fascinating us, enchanting us, charming us in spite of the pitiful scene that it was just now under our eyes. For the wives of the crushed little men had found the crushed and shapeless bodies and were crying over them and sobbing and lamenting, and a priest was kneeling there with his hands crossed on his breast, praying. The crowds of pitying friends were massed about them, reverently covered with their bare hands, bowed with so many tears running down, a scene which Satan paid no attention to until a small noise of the weeping and praying began to annoy him. Then he reached out and took a heavy board seat out of the swing we had and brought it down. It smashed all the people into the earth, just as they had been flies, and went on talking just the same. An angel and a killed priest. An angel who did not know how to do wrong, and yet destroys in cold blood hundreds of helpless poor men and women who had never done him any harm. It made us sick to see that awful deed, and to think that none of these poor creatures was prepared except the priest, for none of them had ever heard of Mass or seen a church, and we were witness, and we had seen these murders done, and our duty to tell, and let the law take its course. But then he went on talking right along, and worked his enchantments upon us again, and that fatal music of his voice. He made us forget everything, and we could only listen to him and love him and be his slaves and do with us as he would. He made us drunk with joy of being with him and of looking into heaven of his eyes and the feeling of ecstasy that thrilled along our veins and from the touch of his hands. Chapter 3. The strength. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Hiccup there. Chapter 3. The stranger had been everything. He had been everywhere. He knew everything and forgot nothing. What another must study, he learned at glance, and there were no difficulties for him. And he made things live before you when you told him about them. He saw the world made. He saw Adam created. He saw Samson surge against the pillars and bring the temple down in the ruins about him. He saw Caesar's death. He told of the daily life in heaven. He had seen the damned writhing of the red waves of hell. He had made us see all these things, and it was if we were on the spot and looking at them with our own eyes. And we felt them too, but there was no sign that they were anything to him beyond mere entertainments. Those visions of hell, the poor babes, the women, the girls, the lads and men, shrieking and supplicating in anguish, why, we could hardly bear it. But he was so bland about it, it was if it had been so many imitation rats in an artificial fire. And always when he was talking about men and women here on earth and in their doings, even the grandest and sublimest, we were secretly ashamed, for his manners showed to him that their doings were paltry, poor consequence. Often you would think he was talking about flies, if you didn't know. Once he even said in so many words that our people here were quite interesting to him, notwithstanding they were so dull and ignorant and trivial and conceited and diseased and rickety and such a shabby, poor, worthless lot all around. He said it in quite a matter of course way, and without bitterness, just as a person might talk about bricks or manure or any other thing that was of no consequence and had feelings. I could see he meant no offense, but in my thoughts I set it down as not very good manners. Manners, he said. Why, it is merely the truth, and truth is good manners. Manners are a fiction. The castle is done. What do you think? Anyone would have been obliged to like it. It was lovely to look at. It was so shapely and fine, and so cunningly perfect in all its particulars, even the little flags waving from the turrets. Satan said, we must put the artillery in place now, and station the halberds, and display the cavalry. Our men and horses were a spectacle to see, and they were so little like what they were intended for. For of course we had no art in making such things. Satan had said they were the worst he had seen, and when he touched them and made them alive, they were just ridiculous the way they acted, on account their legs not being uniform lengths. They reeled and sprawled around as if they were drunk, and endangered everyone's lives around them, and finally fell over and lay helpless kicking. It made us all laugh, though. It was a shameful thing to see. The guns were charged with dirt to fire a salute, but they were so crooked and so badly made that all they could do is burst when they went off, and killed some of the gunnermen and crippled the others. Satan said we would have a storm now, and an earthquake if we liked, but we must stand off a piece, out of danger. We wanted to call the people away too, but he said never mind to them, and they were no consequence, and we could make more some time or another if we needed them. A small storm cloud began to settle down black over the castle, and the miniaturized lightning and thunder began to play, and the ground to quiver, and the wind and the pipes and the whiz, and the rain to fall, and all the people flocked into the castle for shelter. A cloud settled down blacker and blacker, and only one could see that the castle dimly through it. The lightning blazed out flash upon flash, and pierced the castle and set it on fire, and the flames shone out red and fierce through the cloud, and the people came flying out, shrieking, but Satan brushed them off back and paying no attention to our begging and crying and imploring. And in the midst of the howling of the wind and the volley of the thunder, and the magazine blew up, the earthquake rent the ground wide, the castle wrecked and ruined, tumbled into the chasm, which swallowed it from sight and closed upon it, with all the innocent lives, not one of the 500 poor creatures escaping. Our hearts were broken. We could not keep from crying. Do not cry, Satan said. They were of no value, but they are going to hell. Oh, it's no matter. We can make plenty more. It was of no use to try and move him. Evidently, he was wholly without feelings and could not understand. He was full of bubbling spirits, as gay as if he were at a wedding instead of a fiendish massacre. And he was bent on making us feel as he did. And of course his magics accomplished his desires. It was no trouble to him. He did whatever he pleased with us. In a little while we were dancing on the grave, and he was playing to us on a strange, sweet instrument, which he took out of his pocket, and the music, but there was no music like that, unless perhaps in heaven, and that was where he brought it from, he said. It made one mad for pleasure, and we could not take our eyes from him, and the looks that went out from our eyes came from our hearts, and their dumb speech was worship. He brought the dance from heaven too, and the bliss of paradise in it. Presently, he said he must go away on an errand, but we could not bear the thought of it, and clung to him, and pleaded with him to stay, and that pleased him. And he said so, and said he would not go yet, but would wait a little while, and we would sit down and talk a few minutes longer. And he told us Satan was only his real name, and that he was to be known by it to us alone. But when he had chosen another, he was to be called in the presence of others, just a common one, such as people have. Philip Tram. It sounded so odd and mean for such a being, but it was his decision, and we said nothing. His decision was sufficient. We had seen wonders this day, and my thoughts began to run on the pleasure it would be to tell them when I got home. But he noticed those thoughts and said, "No, all these matters are a secret among us four. I do not mind you trying to tell them, if you like, but I will protect your tongues, and nothing of the secret will escape them." It was a disappointment, but I couldn't be helped, and it cost us a sigh or two. We talked pleasantly along, and he was always reading our thoughts and responding to them, and it seemed to me that it was a most wonderful of all things he did. But he interrupted my musings and said, "No, it would be wonderful for you, but it is not wonderful for me. I am not limited like you. I am not subject to human conditions. I can measure and understand your human weaknesses, for I have studied them. But I have none of them. My flesh is not real, although it would seem firm to your touch. My clothes are not real. I am a spirit. Father Peter is coming." We looked around but could not see anyone. "He is not in sight yet. but he will see him presently. Do you know him? No. Wouldn't you like to talk with him when he comes? He is not ignorant and dull like us, and he would like so to talk with you. Will you? Another time, yes, but not now. I must go on my errand after a little. There he is now. You can see him. Sit still and don't say anything. We looked up and saw Father Peter approaching through the chestnuts. We three were sitting together in the grass, and Satan had sat in front of us on the path. Father Peter came slowly along with his head down, thinking and stopping within a couple of yards of us, took off his hat and got a silk handkerchief and stood there mopping his face and looking as if he were going to speak to us, but he didn't. Presently he muttered, I can't think of what brought me here. It seems as if I were in my study a minute ago, but I suppose I have been dreaming along for an hour, and I have come along this stretch without noticing, for I am not myself these troubled days. He went on mumbling along to himself and walked straight through Satan, just as if nothing were there. It made us catch our breath to see it. We had the impulse to cry out, the way you nearly always do when a startled thing happens, but something mysterious restrained us, and we remained quiet, only breathing fast. Then the trees hid Father Peter after a while, and Satan said, It is as I told you. I am only a spirit. Yes, one perceives it now, said Nicholas, but we are not spirits. It is plain he did not see you, but we were invisible too. He looked at us, but didn't seem to see us. No, none of us was visible to him, for I wished it so. It seemed almost too good to be true, that we were actually seeing these romantic and wonderful things, and that it was not a dream. And there he sat, looking just like anybody, so natural and simple and charming, and chatting along again, the same as ever, and, well, words cannot make you understand what we felt. It was an ecstasy, and an ecstasy is a thing that will not go into words. It feels like music, so that another person can get the feeling of it. He was back in the old ages once more now, and making us live before us. He had seen so much, so much. It was just trying to wonder to look at him and try to think how it must seem to have such experience beyond one. But it made you seem sorrowfully trivial, and the creature of the day, such a short and paltry day too. And he didn't say anything to raise up your drooping pride. No, not a word. He always spoke of men in the same old indifferent way, just as one speaks of bricks and manure piles and such things. You could see that they were of no consequence to him, no way or the other. He didn't mean to hurt us. You could see that, just as we don't mean to insult a brick when we disparage it. A brick's emotion is nothing to us. It never occurs to us to think whether it has or not. Once we were bunching the most illustrious kings and conquerors and poets and prophets and pirates and beggars together, just a brick pile. I was shamed into putting in a word of man, and asked him why he made so much difference between men and himself. He had to struggle with that a moment. He hadn't seen to understand how I could ask such a strange question. Then he said, The difference between man and me, the difference between immortal and immortal. between a cloud and a spirit. He picked up a wood louse that was creeping along a piece of bark. That is the difference between Caesar and this. I said, one cannot compare things which by their nature and other intervals between them are not comparable. You have answered your own question, he said. I will expand it. Man is made of dirt. I saw him made. I am not made of dirt. Man is a museum of diseases, a home of impurities. He comes today and is gone tomorrow. He begins as dirt and departs as stench. I am of the aristocracy of the imperishables, and man has the moral sense. You understand. He has the moral sense. That would seem to be the difference enough between us, all by itself. He stopped there as if that settled the matter. I was sorry, for at the time I had but a dim idea of what the moral sense was. I merely knew that we were proud of having it, and when he talked like that about it, it wounded me. And I felt as if feels things as a girl, her dearest finery is being admired, and then overhears strangers making fun of it. For a while, we were all silent, and I, for one, was depressed. Then Satan began to chat again, and soon was sparking along in such a cheerful and vivacious vein that my spirits rose again once more. He told some very cunning things that made us in a gale of laughter. And when he was telling us about the time that Samson tied the torches to the fox's tail and set them loose in the Philistines' corn, Samson sitting on the fence, slapping his thighs and laughing, with the tears running down his cheeks, and lost his balance and fell off the fence. The memory of that picture got him to laughing too, and we did have a most lovely and jolly time. By and by, he said, I am going on my errand now. Don't, we all said. Don't go. Stay with us. You won't come back. Yes, I will. I give you my word. When? Tonight? Say when. It won't be long. You will see. We like you. And I like you. And as proof of it, I will show you something fine to see. Usually when I go, I merely vanish. But now I will dissolve myself and let you see me do it. He stood up, and it was quickly finished. He thinned away and thinned away until he was a soap bubble, except that he kept his shape. You could see the bushes through him as clearly as you could see things through a soap bubble. And all over him played and flashed the delicate iridescent colors of the bubble. And along with them was the thing shaped like a window sash, which you always see on a globe of a bubble. You have seen a bubble strike the carpet and lightly bound along 2 or 3 times before it bursts. He did that. He sprang, touched the grass, bound, floated along, touched again, and so on, and presently exploded. Puff. And in his place was vacancy. It was a strange and beautiful thing to see. We did not say anything, but sat wondering and dreaming and blinking, and finally Seppi rose up and said, mournfully sighing, I suppose none of it has happened. Nicholas laughed and said about the same. I was miserable to hear them say it, for it was the same cold fear that was in my own mind. Then we saw old Father Peter wandering along back, with his head bent down, searching the ground. When he was pretty close to us, he looked up and saw us and said, How long have you been there, boys? A little while, father. Then it is since I came by, and maybe you can help me. Did you come up the path? Yes, father. That is good. I came that same way. I have lost my wallet. There wasn't much in it, but a very little is so much to me for all I had. I suppose you haven't seen any of it. No, father, but we will help you hunt. It is what I was going to ask you. Why, here it is. We hadn't noticed it. It was laying there, right where Satan had stood before when he began to melt. If he did melt, and it wasn't a delusion. Father Peter picked it up and looked very much surprised. It is mine, but not the contents. This is fat. Mine was flat. Mine was light. This is heavy. He opened it, and it was stuffed full that it could not hold with gold coins. He let us gaze our fill, and of course we did gaze, for we had never seen so much money at one time before. All our mouths came open to say, Satan did it, but nothing came out. There it was, you see. We could not tell what Satan didn't want us to. He had said so himself. Boys, did you do this? It made us laugh, and it made him laugh too, as soon as he thought what a foolish question it was. Who's been here? Our mouths came open to answer, but stood so for a moment, because we couldn't say nobody, for it wouldn't be true. And the right word didn't seem to come. Then I thought of the right one and said it. Not a human being. Is that so? Said the others, and let their mouths go shut. It is not so, said Father Peter, and looked at us very severely. I came by here a while ago, and there was no one here, but that is nothing. There was someone here since. I don't mean to say that the person didn't pass here before you came, but I don't mean to say you saw him. But someone did pass. That I know. On your honor, you saw no one? Not a human being. That is sufficient. I know you are telling me the truth. He began to count the money on the path, and we on our knees eagerly helping to stack it in little piles. It is 1,100 ducats odd, he said. Oh dear, if it was only mine, I could so need it, and his voice broke and his lips quivered. It is yours, sir, we all cried out at once, even every heller. No, it is not mine. Only 4 ducats are mine. The rest, he fell to dreaming, poor old soul, and caressing some of the coins in his hands, and forgot where he was sitting there on his heels with his old gray head bare. It was pitiful to see. No, he said, waking up, it isn't mine. I cannot count it. I think some enemy. It must be a trap. Nicholas said, Father Peter, with all the exceptions of the astrologer, you haven't had a real enemy in the village, nor Margaret either. And not even a half enemy that's rich enough to chance 1,100 ducats to you to mean turn. I'll ask you if it's so or not. He couldn't get around that argument and cheered him up. But it isn't mine, you see. I'm on. Sorry, executive producer, guys. He couldn't get around the argument, and it cheered him up. But it isn't mine, you see. It isn't mine in any case. He said in a wistful way, like a person that wouldn't be sorry, but glad if anybody would contradict him. It's yours, Father Peter, and we are witnesses to it, aren't we, boys? Yes, we are. And we'll stand by it too. Bless your hearts. You do almost persuade me, you do. Indeed, if I only had 100 odd ducats of it. The house is mortgaged for it, and we have no home above our heads, and if we don't pay tomorrow, and all that 4 ducats is all we had got in there. It's yours, every bit of it, and you've got to take it. We are bail, that is all. Aren't we, Theodore? Aren't we, Seppi? We too said yes, and Nicholas stuffed the money back into the shabby old wallet and made the owner take it. So he would use 200 of it, for his house was a good enough security for that, and he put the rest of the interest till the rightful owner came for it. And on our side, we must sign a paper showing how he got the money, a paper to show the villagers as proof that he had not gotten it out of his troubles dishonestly. And that was the first 3 chapters of Mark Twain's The Mysterious Stranger. I hope you guys enjoyed that. You guys almost got a chance to see my executive producer for the first time. I like that. I got to get her in more often. She kind of normally calls me on my phone, like I did, last week when we were doing Shakespeare's sonnets. But she is here keeping an eye because we're looking at maybe getting some new equipment. And so this might look a little bit better in the months ahead. Kind of excited by that. So she's keeping an eye on the signal outside the library, which is not normal. You guys know that we have the other main studio that we do the Thursday night show on. But we're doing this, and she stopped by and probably going to give me a helping hand putting this back in the car so we could get it back to the main studio. I'm glad you were here for the show. I hope you guys enjoyed the book so far. The first 3 chapters, we will start with chapter 4 next week. Next 3 chapters of The Mysterious Stranger by Mark Twain. I am Joel K. This is Accessibly Live, the book club reading room, every Sunday night here from the Banfield Library. And we're glad to have you here visiting. Thank you very much. We're going to get ready to get done out of here. Who knows? Maybe I'll take the executive producer for ice cream somewhere. I'm the kind of guy. But before we go, let's do like we do every night. Both the Thursday night show, the conversation station, and the book club reading room. Let's do a final quote. And I found this recently by the great American author Alice Walker. She who gave us the great literary book, The Color Purple, and many other titles. Alice Walker gave us this quote, and I like it a lot. I understood at a very early age that in nature I felt everything I should feel in church, but never did. Walking in the woods, I felt in touch with the universe and with the spirit of the universe. Kind of reflective to what the book we're reading this month. I understood at a very early age that in nature, I felt everything I should feel in church, but never did. Walking in the woods, I felt in touch with the universe and with the spirit of the universe. Alice Walker. If you haven't read Color Purple, it is one of those banned books. Those crazy people down south who want to ban books and burn books. we're going to get out of here. I appreciate everybody who's watched. This is Accessibly Live, the book club reading room, every single Sunday night, live here on Twitch, and then also on YouTube. Go check us out on YouTube if you would like to. We'd appreciate it. Take care, all. We're going to get out of here. Have a wonderful night. Be well, be safe, be kind. Have a wonderful week ahead, and we'll see you this coming Thursday in the main studio for Accessibly Live, the conversation station, and next Sunday for chapters 4, 5, and 6 of The Mysterious Stranger, Mark Twain. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.